Prince Harry really did that. At a movie premiere last year, he asked the CEO of Disney to hook his wife up with voiceovers.
Hustling at movie premieres, pitching your wife to the CEO of Disney for voiceover work. That
Queen summoned everyone to a private meeting. Everyone attended except Meghan Markle. And I'll be honest, I don't blame Meghan for not going, because nothing good happens when white people invite you to the countryside. We've all seen Get Out. We know how this shit ends.
Trevor Noah just took a shot at Meghan Markle on live television. And honestly, he was probably the last person anyone expected to go there. For years, Trevor had her back publicly. He defended her story, aimed his jokes squarely at the royal institution, and made it sound like she was the one navigating an impossible situation inside a broken system. So when Trevor suddenly switched directions, the room felt it instantly. When someone who was firmly in your corner starts publicly calling things out, that's when people understand the cultural temperature has genuinely changed. It started back when Archie was born.
The 60 Minutes interview was a great chance to hear Harry and Meghan's story in case you missed their 2-hour sit-down with Oprah or their 6-part Netflix documentary.
Trevor was riffing about the royal family stressing over baby names, poking fun at palace traditions, and the general absurdity of the whole institution. At that point, he was still firmly on her side. The jokes were aimed at the system, not at her. He appeared to genuinely believe she was caught inside something she hadn't fully signed up for. But then, a specific moment shifted his perspective entirely. The story about Prince Harry approaching the Disney CEO at the Lion King premiere, essentially pitching Meghan for a voiceover role right there on the red carpet in front of everyone. That's when Trevor started reading the situation differently.
You gotta admit, the monarchy has fallen off, right? No, because back in the day, it used to be like, if you marry my daughter, I'll give you Burgundy.
Suddenly, the whole narrative looked less like two people escaping a cruel institution and more like a very visible, very deliberate hustle being run in public. And Trevor broke it down with that particular brutal but funny precision he's known for. He pointed out that royal marriages historically moved entire civilizations, alliances formed, wars avoided, until power restructured across continents based on who married who. Centuries of geopolitical strategy. And somehow that same royal storyline had arrived at a man pitching his wife for a cartoon voice role at a movie premiere. That contrast landed hard. And once Trevor said it out loud, the floodgates opened. Other comedians jumped in fast.
I think Harry is a f***ing twat. Like, my life was so hard. Everybody's f***ing life is hard.
Yeah,
you were the prince of a goddamn country who dressed up as a f***ing Nazi, and now you're trying to come back as the Pope? Suck it.
The late-night hosts especially didn't hold back. Jimmy Kimmel was among the first to publicly identify the glaring contradiction sitting at the center of their whole story. Their stated reason for leaving the royal family was that the environment had become too hostile, too rooted in bias, to stay. Kimmel zeroed in on the strange irony embedded in that explanation and laid it out for his audience in a way that made them pause, look at each other, and then burst out laughing because the situation genuinely sounded surreal when said plainly. Kimmel wasn't finished. When Prince Harry released his memoir, hundreds of pages of deeply personal stories about palace life, family conflict, and everything hidden behind closed doors.
Harry said racism was a big part of their decision to leave, which things are bad at Buckingham Palace if they came to America to get away from racism.
Kimmel approached it like a public diary written by someone who had grown up surrounded by extraordinary privilege. The contrast between the content and the context had the crowd roaring every time he went back to it. Then Jimmy Fallon found his moment. And it turned out to be one of the most talked about clips of the entire cycle. Footage of Meghan carefully transferring pretzels from one bag into a noticeably more upscale bag became an internet event overnight. To viewers watching it, the clip felt like a perfectly compressed version of the entire brand, taking something completely ordinary and presenting it as elevated lifestyle content. The internet did not let that one go quietly.
And I know some people are disappointed by the name Archie, but there's one person who's super excited, the Queen. Yeah, because for the last 9 months, she's been like, please don't be Jamal, please don't be Jamal, please don't be Jamal.
Stephen Colbert spotted something equally telling. The whole H&M branding, treating their initials like a luxury fashion label, complete with carefully managed imagery and constant visual identity control. Colbert joked that every element of their public presence felt less like two people living their lives and more like a fully produced marketing campaign running 24 hours a day. The Polish was so consistent it had become its own punchline. But Conan O'Brien took things somewhere genuinely strange. He discovered that a museum worker was temporarily storing wax figures of Harry and Meghan. And from that single detail, Conan built an entire comedy universe. He leaned so completely into the bit that he announced he had personally adopted the figures and that they were now living in a warm, loving home where they were being treated far better than they ever were at the museum.
Harry, whose memoir just broke the Guinness record for fastest selling nonfiction book of all time. The story of Prince Harold and his frozen yogurt slinger is so popular, they're now releasing a version for kids. I don't know if you know about this. It's a twist on The Princess and the Pea. It's called The Prince and the Penis.
He even noted that the museum staff had failed to properly appreciate details like Meghan's elegantly soft hands and Harry's immaculately styled lips. The whole thing was completely ridiculous and completely perfect. Their public image had become so layered and so strange that wax replicas of them could anchor an entire comedy segment without a single additional prop. Conan also went directly at the lifestyle brand. Luxury products appearing with premium packaging and premium price tags being presented like rare artifacts sourced from the hills of Montecito. Just the gap between the down-to-earth image and the high-end price points created a contradiction that comedians simply could not leave alone. But if the late-night hosts were sharpening their knives, the stand-up comics came in with something heavier. When Joe Coy hosted the Golden Globes, people anticipated the usual carefully calibrated safe material.
And he'll say M and you'll say H and your friends say M and it just is a thing.
It's a thing.
And do you both love it?
Yes, and I like nicknames a lot.
What could it be? A mystery for the ages.
Instead, he went straight for the headlines. In one tight line, he framed their entire situation as a prestige drama about an extremely wealthy and complicated family, except somehow without any of the compelling plot developments that would make you want to keep watching. Coy kept building. He joked about Harry calling a fictional actress portraying his grandmother to request financial assistance, a scenario so outrageous it shouldn't have landed, except it did, because it felt oddly consistent with everything that had actually happened. Then he dropped the line that spread everywhere. Massive streaming deals, enormous paydays, and yet most viewers genuinely could not name a single thing worth remembering. According to the joke, the checks were apparently for simply existing in the public conversation. But if Joe Coy set the stage, Chris Rock walked in and scorched everything on it. Chris zeroed in on the Oprah interview, specifically the moment where Meghan described being genuinely shocked by how the royal family operated, as though the entire institution had blindsided her. Chris wasn't accepting that framing for even a second.
Curious what they did with Harry and Meghan's wax figures, so I found the museum employee who's temporarily storing them.
His point was precise and devastating. The British monarchy has been running for centuries. The traditions, the hierarchy, the internal politics, to the relentless press, all of it is thoroughly documented public knowledge. Expressing shock at discovering how it works, he joked, was like voluntarily joining the loudest biker gang in the country and then filing a formal complaint about all the motorcycles. He kept stacking the comparisons, and every single one hit harder than the one before. Then he went straight at the most globally reported moment from that entire Oprah conversation, the discussion about what their baby might look like. Chris acknowledged that families speculate about new babies all the time. Features, coloring, who the child might resemble.
And now it's like, my wife actually does a pretty good Timon. You should hear her. Come on, baby, do the thing. Hakuna Matata, do the thing.
His joke drew a sharp line between natural curiosity and something being deliberately constructed into an international scandal that powered an entire media narrative for months. Once Chris said all of that out loud on stage, it felt like a door had been officially kicked off its hinges. Nikki Glaser walked straight through that open door. Her take stripped everything down to its most fundamental question. Without the royal connection, does any of this exist? The Netflix agreements, the Oprah special, the global platform, the lifestyle brand, the humanitarian identity, Nikki's routine suggested that without the title and the palace backstory, there's simply no story at all. Comedian Godfrey picked up a related thread, noting that once the media attention reached its peak, every single public appearance started carrying that same over-rehearsed, over-managed energy. The interviews, the speeches.
Got out of copping and then became a food broker, which we're like, come on, that's CIA, right?
Yes.
And he's like, no, I'm really am a middleman for jars of jam.
He works for Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
Tiny jams, harvestable jams.
Yes, exactly.
Made from the oils of Montecito.
The carefully staged, candid moments, all of it moving with the same polished, pre-planned rhythm. American comedians were already doing serious damage. But across the Atlantic, British comics were operating with an entirely different level of sharpness. Jimmy Carr opened with a contradiction he said was impossible to ignore. Meghan had built a significant portion of her public identity around messages of female independence and empowerment. The branding was consistent and everywhere. Then, the moment a prince appeared in the picture, the entire direction of her life pivoted almost overnight. Carr noted that the independent Hollywood career, the self-built path, the whole trajectory flipped instantly. The punchline, he suggested, had essentially written itself. And then there are the old photographs and clips that continue surfacing online. Carr joked that no amount of rebranding ever fully erases what the internet has already decided to remember. Once something is out there, it stays out there permanently.
Oliver, you have generously offered to keep the wax figures of Harry and Meghan safe.
Yeah, that's correct. And if I may, I would just like to say that I'm definitely not using the wax figures for sex stuff.
The commitment to the bit was unmatched, but Conan kept pushing it further.
They are in a loving home, and I treat them better than the museum ever did. They didn't appreciate Meghan's soft hands or Harry's supple lips.
Another contradiction British critics kept returning to involved the lifestyle gap. There was extensive public discussion about how suffocating and damaging royal life had been, while simultaneously the couple was splitting time between countries, still connected to the institutional infrastructure they claimed to be escaping. British audiences in particular felt that tension sharply. From their perspective, the very system being criticized publicly had also been providing the platform, the security, and the access that made everything else possible. And comedian Simon Bodkin actually committed to giving them a genuine chance.
Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags?
They don't know why. That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
It's another bag.
And that confuses people.
This, we're just going to put into a different bag.
Rather than reacting to headlines, he sat through their entire Netflix documentary series, all 6 hours and 4 episodes. He joked that he powered through every single minute just waiting for the story to shift direction somewhere. According to his take, the moment the H&M couple branding appeared, complete with matching initials presented like a luxury logo, was the moment the documentary lost the room entirely. Pivoting from serious institutional critique straight into cutesy nickname merchandising struck most viewers as tonally catastrophic. The documentary was supposed to be a reintroduction, a reframing of the entire narrative. Instead, it handed comedians an entirely new section of material. That's when some commentators stopped joking and started analyzing the strategic thinking, or the absence of it. Bill Maher said he had seen the pattern building from the very beginning.
How great was Imelda Staunton in The Crown? Wasn't she amazing? The portrayal of the Queen was so good, Prince Harry called her and asked her for money.
To him, the core problem was the constant accumulation of contradictions that nobody ever directly addressed. He pointed out that Queen Elizabeth operated by an almost opposite philosophy for decades. Almost no personal interviews, very little public explanation, and a great deal of carefully maintained silence. In his view, that restraint consistently earned more genuine respect than endless streams of public statements ever could. But Maher said the silence wasn't even the piece that bothered most people deepest. The part that genuinely irritated audiences, he argued, was something more fundamental.
Turns out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just by Netflix.
Around the world, after millions of families are managing real daily pressure, jobs, healthcare, housing, bills that don't stop arriving. Then they turn on the television and watch two extraordinarily wealthy public figures requesting global sympathy on camera while sitting in a Montecito mansion. That gap, Maher argued, is exactly why the story keeps generating friction no matter how it's repackaged. And he went further. He said the issue isn't simply the complaining. Public figures complain publicly all the time, and audiences generally move on. What pushes people past frustration is when the complaint comes packaged with the implicit demand that everyone must agree with it, or risk being labeled part of the problem. Maher joked that it stopped sounding like a request for understanding and started sounding like a mandatory enrollment form.
That's a great series about a rich, white, dysfunctional family, all scheming. Oh no, that's The Crown. That's The Crown. I'm sorry.
And he made it abundantly clear he had no intention of signing it. Then John Oliver stepped in with what many observers considered the most precisely targeted commentary of the entire cycle. No dramatic setup, no theatrical punchline, just a calm, methodical dismantling of the contradictions. Oliver is known for choosing every word with surgical care, which made the moment land even harder. When someone that measured and deliberate starts openly questioning the entire situation, audiences immediately understand something significant has shifted. Over on Saturday Night Live, Colin Jost had been circling the subject for years. Even one of his sharpest lines captured the strange position the couple seemed permanently stuck in. Neither the royal institution nor Hollywood fully knew what to do with them, and the result was a kind of highly publicized, carefully branded limbo that satisfied nobody on either side.
Meg does her little phony like, I'm so busy just doing like so much wealthy stuff. I have the show, the podcast, I'm a duchess, I have all this wealth. It's just so many busy things as a wealthy person.
So busy.
It was so fake. I was like, oh.
He also compared Harry's decision-making to watching a tech billionaire with every possible advantage systematically dismantle something that was working perfectly, just to chase something that nobody could quite define. The audience understood the point immediately because the parallel was almost uncomfortably accurate. SNL pushed further with scripted sketches, imagining the relationship as a television pitch. And once your actual life becomes the premise of someone else's scripted comedy, the image rehabilitation conversation is essentially over. But the most surgically precise satire didn't come from live television at all. It came from the puppet show Spitting Image. And their version of Meghan became one of the most discussed characters the show had produced in years. Clips spread everywhere online. One sketch mocked elevated lifestyle content by presenting what was described as artisanal soul food, which turned out to be a bag of crisps with a decorative flower placed on top. The joke worked precisely because the writers barely had to stretch reality to make it land.
NBC has announced plans for a spin-off to the hit series Suits. It will focus on Meghan Markle's character's struggle to balance her legal career while also caring for an unemployed immigrant.
One detail that kept pulling comedians back was the geography of the supposed private life. Living in close proximity to one of the most famous interviewers on Earth raised eyebrows that never fully came back down. The joke essentially wrote itself. If the goal is genuine privacy and quiet, the neighborhood choices are sending a very different signal. In Spitting Image sketches, that dynamic became a recurring gag. The puppet Harry frequently appeared confused or visibly overwhelmed, while puppet Meghan confidently drove forward with branding strategies, media plans, and public positioning. Exaggerated, but clearly drawn from a public perception that had been building for years. What really accelerated the online conversation was what happened after certain clips reportedly disappeared from various platforms. Fans began speculating immediately about whether outside pressure had played a role. Nothing was ever confirmed officially, but the speculation alone generated more attention than the original content had. The moment something vanishes from the internet, people want to see it more urgently than they ever did when it was freely available.
Gone on, Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
That particular pressure reportedly had zero effect on South Park. The show has been dismantling public figures for decades, and when they turned their attention to Harry and Meghan, they committed completely. Harry's memoir, hundreds of pages of deeply personal royal revelations, got compressed into a single repeated joke that the audience understood immediately and kept laughing at harder each time it circled back. What made the episode particularly effective was that the writers didn't need wild exaggeration. They simply placed the characters inside situations where the existing contradictions could speak entirely for themselves. Real headlines kept arriving after the episode aired that felt almost like the news cycle was collaborating with the writers. The final scene, widely described as the most devastating moment of the entire episode, mocked enormous media agreements attached to projects that audiences genuinely struggled to recall. That theme then rippled outward into other shows. Family Guy delivered one of the tightest single-line summaries of the entire journey, from the historic weight of Buckingham Palace to the world of premium lifestyle content and personal brand partnerships.
Elon built electric cars, he's going to Mars. Why is he even involving himself with Twitter? It would be like if the Prince of England gave it all up just to marry an actor from Suits.
The distance between those 2 points, compressed into one joke, was almost too much to process. But no animated series pushed quite as far as The Prince, which produced one of the boldest and most discussed portrayals of Meghan on television. What made it particularly sharp was how little exaggeration the writers actually needed. The real-world lifestyle brand, organic products, luxury packaging, premium price positioning, immaculate visual presentation, was already sitting so close to satire that the cartoon only needed to tilt it slightly sideways. One scene depicted a formal dinner having to be completely restarted because the camera briefly shifted its focus away from the center of attention. The joke landed because the exaggeration felt almost like documentary footage. For the comedians who kept returning to this story across years and formats, that detail captures the real theme that ties everything together. The debate was never genuinely about privacy. It was never really about institutional bias or press intrusion. When in the eyes of the people doing the sharpest analysis, from Trevor Noah's early pivot to South Park's full commitment, The entire saga has always been about one thing: control of the spotlight. Who holds it, who chases it, and what people are willing to do to make sure it never moves.